right, everyone. Welcome back to the We Shall Not Sleep podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. I tell you, man, this has been just such a phenomenal last few weeks for us here in the Crable household, my family, and we've been able to, simply have just tremendous experiences and overcomings and some amazing God sightings and witnesses around the holiday season. I'm so grateful for so many people. You know, this time of year, it really kind of starts at Thanksgiving for me as we go into the Advent season, and I'm able to travel and be with family. And then as Advent starts that weekend, the first Sunday, with my church and how things go there, it's really a gateway to just reflection. And that's something that has really hit me every year around this time. It's always reflecting, saying, where's God brought you in this entire year? And this past week, I discussed joy, the idea of joy, and how if we're going to celebrate one of those virtues at Advent, being joy, that joy ultimately is a choice. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of life. Not saying that your life's not going to be full of happiness and sorrow. Of course it will be. You'll experience all of those things. But on top of that, what are the things that are drawing us closer to God, and it's our choice to do so. And one of the results of having a relationship with God is having joy. And part of that reflection, part of what I have been going through here as of late in my devotional studies, are just some really amazing things about the person of Christ that you see in our Old Testament. Things I've never really thought about before. And we look back to the beginning of the book, the great book, our Bible, Genesis chapter 1. You look at creation, and you look at the story of creation, and you see the Holy Trinity present. I talked about that last week, about the idea that God was already existing in a living, loving relationship. You see God is the ethereal being, the Father there. You see the Spirit, and then you have God. You have this presence of Jesus already in the garden, walking and confronting Adam in his sin and finding him hiding with his wife, Eve. But in Genesis 3, you also get this promise that there would be this enmity now between mankind and Satan, and that this enmity would not just come from the fact that now the certain cannot be trusted. We know that for certain, but from the woman's womb, her seed, the woman only, by the way, it's only her seed, it's the virgin birth, will crush the serpent, thus seen in the person of Christ, saying that his heel will be bruised because, that's where a serpent strikes, is at the heel, but Satan will crush the head of the serpent by conquering death, as nothing could hold him because he was fully divine, fully God, as well as fully man. And that's just a beautiful thing to reflect on during the Christmas season. I read to us last week from the book of Malachi, I believe, chapter 5, and this idea that the Son who has existed from ancient days, or ages eternal is how it's phrased in certain translations, is this acknowledgement of the divinity of Christ, this Christ child, this baby that we celebrate. And I just can't help but think when we sing Away in a Manger or Silent Night or one of my favorites, Come, O Come, Emmanuel, or O Holy Night, we're singing about this baby, this fulfilled promise, this Messiah. And I also think of all of the infants that were slaughtered by Herod. I think if it's a somber night, it's a somber time for a lot of people, filled with a lot of sorrow because they can't be with their loved ones, or they just got bad news, or whatever. And that's where my mind always goes to first. It's not always joy. It's not always the virtues of Advent, which we celebrate as hope, peace, love, joy, and love. It just goes to reflection, saying I'm so grateful for what I have, because that I can't relate to those people in certain circumstances. And that's why it's very helpful to look back. We look at Christ. What does it symbolize? By looking back, he fulfills the things that have come from old, from ancient days, from the very beginning. And the reason why I'm so enthusiastic about this time of year, specifically with everything that goes on, is because I have the faith, I have the confidence, knowing that Christ is that true Messiah, based on all the prophecies he fulfilled by coming to earth. And it's only by looking back that we can see that now, saying, yes, this was Jesus in the Old Testament. every step of the way, because Jesus was God, fully human, fully divine. And what I love about Christmas time, the emphasis of Christ being here, it's like, now what do we do with him? Everybody will have to answer that question. What have you done with God's Son? Have we been pleased with him? Is it just something that, he was a good teacher and that's it? Or we reject him as a false teacher, as a liar? Or was he true? And did he fulfill every word that he said? And was he every word that he said? Both in action and both in being, and representation and manifestation. So as we go throughout the rest of this Christmas season, my encouragement is we're 1 week away from Christmas now. What is the person of Christ, this baby who's come to die for you and I? Again, that was his purpose, right? That was the entire purpose. And as Mary is holding her beloved son, knowing that 30 years and change go by, he will be stripped naked, beaten almost to death, but not yet, and then suffer at the hands of the Messiah. We know the end result, and it's hard, but then we also know that that's not the end of the story. And it folds right into Easter. You can't tell the Easter message without Christmas. You can't tell the Christmas message without Easter. They fold into one another. And I've said this before to my church, that if you're not celebrating Easter, you're celebrating Christmas. The Christian calendar, the way it works is you have the time of Advent, and then you have the Christmas tide, and then you have the Christmas tide leads up to Lent, which is preparation for, Easter. Then you have Easter tide, which is like normal times, as some liturgical calendars put it, all the way now through to Advent. Because those are the two marquee days in the Christian calendar, because now we know that it's not the end of a story. It's not like Jesus was the end of a tragic character arc, and it's like, oh, what could have been, except for no, because that wasn't the end of the story. He's resurrected. And that's why I can look at this baby and say, I know how this ends. Yeah, it's right. I know how it ends. It doesn't end with his crucifixion like in Islam or in Judaism. It's something more. He did resurrect. He is the fulfillment of those prophecies. And that's why I can come back to joy. We're not sitting here in the unknown just waiting for another sign. We're not stuck like our Jewish brothers and sisters who are waiting for the second coming of Elijah. That they put out on the meal and they have an open spot for Elijah. No, that's not us. We're not hoping as people without hope. Our hope is in something eternal, something that's already conquered death. And that's why we can talk about joy. That's why we can talk about peace, hope, and true ultimate love, sacrificial love that comes from the Father to the Son through humanity as Christ becomes that wonderful, wonderful sojourner for the sake of humanity, going to the cross so willingly. As it's also described as in the person of Christ, he was someone that went before us as a unblemished lamb so that he could redeem humanity. What a tremendous thing. He was not just like an overseer of sorts. He stood in the gap. He fulfilled Genesis 3. And it was from the seed of a woman. Wonder why Satan attacks women so much? He's jealous because he can't create. Women have the superpower he doesn't have, and it's from the seed of a woman. Again, not the man, because it was a virgin birth. It was the seed of a woman that crushed him. And Satan wants to completely take that and steal that and destroy it. And so when we understand the purpose of Christ, that he was a forerunner, as the Greek prodromos states, that in the book of Hebrews, that Christ was a forerunner. He went before everyone to do this thing, to fulfill this purpose. That's the love and wonder, beauty and majesty of this Christ child. And so that's why we celebrate. So I'm going to be with you back on Christmas Day, as I was a few years ago. This is when we announced this podcast and where we're going to try to go. That was my whole thing. It was like, this is the purpose and meaning of this podcast. And I think we fulfilled that in 4 years, and I just want to keep going and continue to have conversations, even if it's affecting one listener, no matter where you're at in the world right now. If you're a bot listening to this, transcribing it for someone, if English isn't your first language, I don't know who listens to this. I only get certain metrics from SoundCloud, but I'm only doing it for that one person. So you, as you are listening to this, I want to let you know the joy of Christmas is found in the birth of Jesus Christ, who came to earth specifically to die so that we could be made fully restored, made fully in restoration to God. We, as Gentiles, again, the non-Jewish people, can be grafted into this wonderful family. We no longer have to sacrifice at a temple. Jesus was that perfect sacrifice. And he offers a world of mercy, of grace, unconditional love. And take it from me, your life will never be the same. Joy and contentment are only the first fruits of a life with Jesus. This is not some prosperity message. No. Life with Jesus means that even though not everything will be ideal, not everything will be to your liking, but everything will be okay. Because the dawn comes. The sun does rise, both in the literal and figurative sense, and the sun also has risen. It's your past mistakes, your current situation, the shame, the hurt, the anger, the pain does not have to define you. That's one of the biggest differences. You are branded as a son, a daughter of Christ. He has said that you have nothing to offer me, but I offer this to you freely, this gift of salvation. That's your new identity. That's what defines you. It's the best message, the best love story ever told. If you've never prayed and asked God for your presence, I dare you tonight to ask God to come into your life and make his presence known. He will respond. And if you have the patience for it, it will change your life. That is our message this evening. May God bless you, and may God keep you from now and forevermore. Amen.